Our lesson today is on finding percentages from fractions. Now, we learned about this earlier in the year, but I'm going to review that same method that we used previously, as well as teach you a new way to do it. We're also going to learn how to apply the skill to real-life situations, such as data collected from surveys. We'll start by exploring a problem and solving some problems based on the word problem that I have here. Jill conducted a survey with 40 participants about which kinds of treats they feed their dogs. 15 people said they fed their animals Milk-Bone dog biscuits. 12 said they gave Bill Jack training treats. 8 people said they bought Pedigree dentist sticks. 3 people preferred Eukanuba light treats, and 2 people bought Scooby snacks. Now, this is a situation where someone is collecting data for a real-life reason. Jill wants to know what kind of treats people feed their dogs, and she's going to want to know quantities of each type. So the most common type of question you'll see is this. Which type or what percentage of the people surveyed bought Milk-Bone dog biscuits? So we're going to need to look back at the problem, and we want to find how many people gave their dogs Milk-Bone dog biscuits. And we look and we find it right here, where it says 15 people said they fed their animals Milk-Bone dog biscuits. So we know that the number of people who gave them, we'll write that here, number of people is 15, but they're not asking for the number of people. If you look in the question, it says the percentage of people is what they're looking for. So in order to find the percentage, we can't just use the 15 that we have. We need to make that into a fraction. And where we get the number for our fraction, we have our 15 is the numerator of our fraction that we're going to be writing. So we have 15 out of, and then we need the total number of people that were surveyed, which is 40. So we had 40 total participants. That will be our denominator for pretty much every percentage that we use in this problem. So we had 15 out of 40 people chose Milk-Bone dog biscuits. And we're going to need to make that fraction that we made into a percentage, which is something that we've done previously in the year. Now, in order to change our fraction that we have into a percentage, we're going to do a division problem. The numerator of our fraction becomes the dividend in our division problem. And we're actually going to turn that into a decimal just to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. So that's going to be 15.0 divided by, then the denominator is the divisor. So we're going to do 15.0 divided by 40. And 40 will go into 150 3 times. 3 times 40 is 120. 150 minus 120 is 30. And we're going to need to bring down another 0. And 40 can go into 300 7 times. And 40 times 7 is 280. 300 minus 280 is 20. And we're going to need to bring down one more 0. 40 can go into 200 5 times. 40 times 5 is 200, so our problem is done. Now don't forget, this number that we got as our answer is just our decimal. Once we have that changed into a decimal, we have to either multiply by 100, so I'm going to write that down here. So once you have your decimal, which is 375 thousandths, you either have to multiply it by 100 or move the decimal place over 2 places to the right, which will and put a percentage sign at the end, which will give us 37.5% as our final answer. So we can say in a complete sentence, if we were supposed to, 37.5% 37.5 or 37.5 people preferred Milk-Bone dog biscuits. In the previous slide, we learned that 15/40 was equivalent to 37.5 or 37.5%. And we did that by dividing 15 divided by 40. So the 15 was our dividend and the 40 was our divisor. This time we're going to solve the same exact problem, but we're going to use a different strategy using what we know about proportions. And a proportion, as you know, are two equivalent ratios. So we have 15 over 40, and we're going to set that equal to a number over 100. And we're doing that over 100 because all percentages are fractions out of 100. So we're just saying that 15 out of 40 will be equivalent to a certain number over 100 as a percentage. So we're going to go ahead and solve our ratio like we have been with our regular proportions. 15 times 100, we're going to cross multiply and we get 1,500 and set that equal to our other product of cross multiplication, which is 40 times n, and we'll get 40n. Now we need to isolate the variable by dividing both sides by 40. We have n now isolated. Do 1,500 divided by 40, and it will give us 37.5. And in order to get the correct answer, all we have to do is put the percentage sign in. So 37.5 out of 100 is equivalent to 15 out of 40. We're going to go ahead and try another problem with another number from our data set. The question this time is what percentage of people preferred pedigree dentist for their pets? So now we need to look at our problem and we need to go find where it says pedigree dentist, which is right here, and we're going to look back at the number which says 8 people said they bought pedigree dentist. Now, we can go ahead and put the 8 there, but it's not our answer because it's asking for the percentage. So we have to find the percentage of people that preferred pedigree dentist. Remember, we find this by first starting out with a fraction. We have 8 out of how many people? So then we go back up into our problem and find that you had 40 total participants in the survey. So that would be 8 out of 40 total people preferred pedigree dentist. Now we can go ahead and continue with our problem by setting up a division problem and making that into a percentage. So now we'll go ahead, remember the 8 is our dividend. So we're going to set that up as being 8.00 divided by 40. Because 40 is our divisor. 40 goes into 80, put our decimal point up 2 times. 40 times 2 is 80. Bring down the 0. 40 goes into 0 times, and we are done. Now, the final answer is not 2/10 or 20/100 because once we have that decimal, we have to either multiply by 100 or move the decimal point over 2 places in our final answer to the right. 2 places would equal 20%. So 20% of the people said they preferred pedigree dentist. Finally, we'll go ahead and solve the problem like the new way we learned how, with setting up a proportion with a fraction over 100. Or a ratio over 100. So we have 8 out of 40. We're going to set that equivalent to a number over 100. And first we need to cross multiply. We're going to do 8 times 100 and we'll get 800. Set that equal to our next product of cross multiplication, which should be 40 times n, which is 40n. Then we need to isolate the variable by dividing both sides by 40. We have n by itself now, and then we need to do 800 divided by 40. and we get 20. So all that this is saying is 8 out of 40 is equivalent to, now it's 20 over 100. And our final answer, we just have to remember to put a percent sign in, is 20%, which still means 20% of the people that Jill surveyed prefer Pedigree Dentastix.